Hey there. So I wanted to give a brief overview of what it looks like to hand milk our miniature Jersey cow. So let's just start off with the setup and what you need. So first off, you'll see that she's in what's called a stanchion. Highly recommend you get this put together before you have the cow come over. When we first got our cow, we did not have this, and I quickly figured out that we needed to build it. The basic idea here is just a platform that they can stand on. I do wish I had made mine a little bit bigger, or a little bit higher rather. But the idea is the actual width fairly well contorts to their body. Make sure that, you know, they can't get too much in on the side there. As you can see, she's pretty snug in there, which is a good thing. The other part here is the actual door that they're in. So these guys will actually move back and forth if needed. Thankfully, they fit in really well, and our girls they do a great job at not moving their head once they're in. And then we've also got a door on the back side just to make sure that they can't get out. Cows do walk backwards, so make sure that you're taking care of that on the back side as well. The second piece that we need is just the materials. So I've got my wash bucket, I've got a pail with a lid, I've got an empty bucket, and then I've got my cream for afterwards. So you need to make sure you're using high quality soap on the rags and water. We tend to use Castile soap. You don't want to just put any sort of soap on there, and the reason is you'll see that lots of soaps have lots of chemicals in there and they could actually dry them out. So make sure that you have a good high quality soap. Make sure obviously that the buckets are clean, and then the other part is make sure that you are clean and the stanchion is clean, the hooves are clean. The other part that you want to do is, before you start actually cleaning off the udders and the teats, is check to see if there's any poop or any debris anywhere on the cow itself. And the reason for that is when they move, they could very well shake some of that loose, and it could actually end up falling into your bucket. And there's nothing worse than getting some poop into your bucket. After the cow is in and secured, you got the stanchion, floor, and mat. Her hooves are looking good. No obvious signs of poop on her. What you want to do is you want to clean the teats and the udders. So the way that we do this is, again, we've got our hot soap and water here. I always try to make sure it's not too hot, but at least it's nice and warm, because the warm water helps to break down anything that might be on there. So I'll take a single rag, and what I'll do is I'll clean the whole udder area. And obviously what you're looking for here is you're looking for dirt, you're looking for poop, you know, you're just looking for anything that might fall from the udder into the open pail that you're going to have below. So make sure that you give this one, the first rag, a good clean. We always use 2 rags, and the reason for that is this is just the obvious signs of dirt and debris, and then the second rag we're going to use is just for the teats themselves. Got, right, so she's looking good there. I'll set that and discard it off to the side, and then I'll go ahead and I'll get a different rag. You use a lot of rags when milking cows, at least if you're going to clean them up the way that I'm showing you here today. So I've got the udders are clean, the teats are clean, she's clean. Go ahead, dry my hands. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dry the teats quickly, and so what that does is it just allows make sure there's no soap that gets into your milk pail. Set that off to the side, and what you want to do is you actually want to discard. So I do 2 squirts of discard. The reason I'm doing that is it allows just make sure rather that the area the milk comes out of doesn't have any debris caked up inside there. All right, so now I've got her clean and we're ready to go. So sometimes I'll put some coconut oil on my fingers just to help with the lubrication. Today she's actually not got too much in her, which is good. We have a couple calves on the property, and I noticed this morning that they were having their milk from Selah here. So once we're going, I always find the first thing that people, we've trained several people on how to hand milk cows, and one of the things I noticed right away is that people tend to be real dainty with the teat. And what I'll say is, they're just like pinching the teat. They're just kind of give it a little pinch. You don't want to do that. You want to actually give a good solid squeeze on the teat and pull down. And her teats are so small, I can really only use 2 fingers at a time. And so make sure that you are really pulling on it. And if you ever watch a calf drink milk from them, you'll see how rough they really are. I mean, God really designed these things to take a little bit, you know, a little bit of pressure, a little bit of pulling and tugging, and it's pretty remarkable how resilient they are. And also, that's how you get the milk out. So make sure that you're not just pinching the whole time. Make sure that you're actually giving a good solid squeeze and pull. The other thing to think about too is kicking. So these cows kick. Selah here, she does amazing at not kicking, but our other cow, Gyra, she's not so good at. So she will end up actually kicking while we're milking. So, you know, in the end, it's desensitization that you need. Sometimes if it's been a while, so for example, if you're just starting off, you know, I think the first time we milked a cow, probably one cow took us 45 minutes. It was a crazy length amount of time, you know, and that's just because we didn't know what we were doing. We were learning, we were experienced. Now it can go much faster for us when we're hand milking, and that's just because our fingers have built up the strength. We know how to, milk out the teat properly, those sorts of things. But you'll want to really make sure that you're watching for the kick. And that's why I brought that separate pail with a lid. So first off, I will probably have more milk than this bucket can hold. And second off, I really want to empty out this bucket quickly and often. And often I only fill it up halfway and then I'll dump it. And the reason for that is the old phrase, don't cry over spilt milk. I used to think that related to cereal. I don't think it does. I think it relates to when you're sitting here under a cow for 10 minutes squeezing these teats and working hard, your hands are starting to cramp, and then they kick the bucket and you lose all your milk. I think that's what it's referring to, because I'll tell you what, there's nothing, now there are more things frustrating than that, but that's really frustrating when they do that to you. The second part is your hand, your hand dexterity and cramping. So even right now, my hands are starting to get a little tired. You want to make sure that you take a break. Don't just keep going at it. Shake your hands off. Sometimes I'll stop, I'll just shake. Switching the teat that you're working out, that hand actually changes how you're going to be doing it, and so that helps you to have a little bit longer endurance. In the end, if you're just starting off, your hands are going to hurt, and that's part of the process. If you're hand milking, I would just say, just keep working on it. Make sure that you're trying to loosen up, be smart about your hands and what you're doing throughout the day, but it's just going to be part of the strength that your fingers have to endure with. So one of the other things that comes to mind when talking about hand milking is, when should you hand milk versus using a machine? So we only have 2 heifers on our property, and we started off with just hand milking, and we did that for several months. We do have a machine now, but when you're starting off, if this is your first cow, unless you have some sort of physical limitations that would prevent you from hand milking, I would highly recommend hand milking. And the reason for that is you really get to grow, there's a bond that happens between you and the cow when you're doing that. You learn their mannerisms, you get into a good routine. The machine is great, and it will do things like make sure that your hands don't feel crampy. However, it also introduces other problems like cleaning. Cleaning the machine is quite a bit. I'll share other videos on how we actually clean our machine, but cleaning a machine can take a while. It can break down, and then you end up hand milking anyway. And so I would definitely recommend hand milking at first to get used to the whole process, and then also to get used to the cow. Oftentimes the machines can scare them, especially it's a noise that they don't recognize, and so we had a lot of kicking and behavioral problems with our cow, hooking her up to the machine, and I wouldn't have really known how to do that if I hadn't started hand milking and already dealt with some of the other behavioral issues. Speaking of behavioral issues, if you do have cows that really just don't want to be still, as you can see, Selah is just fantastic at being still. You want to get or look into something called a kick bar. There are other ways to prevent a cow from kicking, and do your research. There's several approaches, but we have a kick bar. It does a good job. not necessarily stopping the kick, but what it does is it allows her to know, hey, I'm here to milk and I better hold still. And so in that sort of sense, I really highly recommend getting a kick bar. So as you can see here, we're just about empty on everything. You really want to make sure that you get all of the teats as empty as possible. And the reason for that is mastitis can culture and can grow in any milk that's still in the udder. So make sure that you get as much milk out as you possibly can when you're hand milking. So it depends on the type of teat and the type of udder. On Selah here, I can actually kind of take my hand, I can actually do this way. I can actually kind of take my hand and squeeze a bit and then pull down. And as you can see, there's a little bit more milk that comes out when I do that. So try your best to get as much out as you possibly can. And you'll notice that you probably spend just as much time on, or you probably spend more time on the last quarter of the milk than you do on the first, 3/4 of the milk that you're gonna get. And the reason is, bless you, she just sneezed. The reason is it starts to slow down and how it's coming out, and so you get less milk for the same amount of time that you're spending. But it's really, really important to not give up early. Get as much as you can out there, even if your hands are hurting, even if it's been a while. And again, the reason is for the health of the cow. If you end up with a case of mastitis, it's no fun. And I'm sure that we'll talk about that at some point in the future. We've really, we've learned that emptying out the teat as much as possible is the best way to prevent mastitis. All right, so this is looking pretty good. Let's give it a final squeeze on each one. Right. She really did not have much today, which is totally fine. This back one, you'll notice that each quarter is its own independent supply, which is really cool. But you'll see that each quarter has its own tendencies to have more, to have less, how it gets drained out. And that's really what I mean by getting to know your cow. You don't really get to learn that as much with the machine. Instead, I've got to learn this because I've been hand milking her for so long. But I've got all the milk, so you want to get the milk in as soon as you possibly can. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to clean up again. So I always use 3 rags on each cow. The first 2 are to clean the initial clean, and then the third one is to clean up afterwards. So the other way to really prevent mastitis is to keep everything clean, everything as clean as possible. So I really focus on making sure that I've cleaned up around the teat area, anything that any bacteria or anything is gone when doing that. And then the second part we do is we put an after cream on it. So we use a mixture of coconut oil and an udder cream that we get online. You'll see that a lot of people at this point use, what's it called? I'm blanking out. You see that a lot of people at this point will use something called iodine. So we did use iodine for the first 6 months or so. We've actually stopped since then for 2 reasons. One is that we still have calves on the property and we didn't want them drinking iodine. The second reason is that a friend of ours recommended just using udder cream and coconut oil and then just cleaning up the teat afterwards. And honestly, that's worked out great. And I think that we're going to stick with that even after our calves leave. So it's a more natural approach. You don't have the potentially harmful side effects of having the iodine on the teat. There's no risk of anything like that. And also the coconut oil and udder cream, they help prevent mastitis and they help to keep the teats nice and lubricated, so they really can dry out. Especially if it's cold out, you'll notice that the teats themselves will start to harden up and start to dry out, just like our skin does. So putting something that's rejuvenating on them really helps. So I gotta grab that real fast. Okay, so I got my cream here. It is a little cold out today. We're in Central Florida, but it still gets cold enough for coconut oil to harden up. So I'm trying to just kind of soften it up with my fingers, get some of the udder cream on there as well. We use all organic stuff wherever possible, including on on our coconut oil and our udder cream. So just kind of squishing it between my fingers, getting it a little bit less solidified. And then you're just gonna go and you're just gonna apply it to each teat. So I do each teat separately, and I always do the teats first, because next what I would go ahead and do is it's actually helpful for the udders to put this on the udders themselves. So I'll go ahead and I'll just brush it on the sides of the udders, make sure that we're getting some of this cream on there. And it's another good time right now to check to see if there's any wounds or anything. Sometimes, especially if you have calves, there can be wounds on teats. Make sure that you're treating those with with a wound care, or again, coconut oil, and those types of things. Thank you.